So we get a lot of requests both from our website, and we've seen some stuff on our YouTube channel and Instagram. I want to get my car restored. I want to build a RESTOMOD. I want to, blah, blah, blah. What does it cost? The answer is it depends. Like, it varies so wildly. One, it depends on what you're starting with. Then it depends on, where you want to go with it. Do you want to modernize that car? Do you want a straight up nut and bolt restoration? Do you just want it to look pretty? Do you want it to just run good? There's so many varying degrees, but I'm going to try and do my best to take you through some steps and give you guys some ideas of, where this stuff goes and what it really takes to do it. So first step usually is someone goes to our website, drivengarage.com. They submit a work request. Thing that happens to me all the time. It's like, it comes through on my computer and, I'm here and I get a work request, and let's say this is a new request, and this guy just says, needs restoration, and sends me one crappy picture of his car. One, that's not enough information for me. What are we starting with? Can you give me a few more pictures? What budget did you have in mind? And let's be realistic about it, and where do you really want to go with this, right? So do you want a full-on show car? Most people don't. They want a car they can drive. They go to Cars and Coffee, right? Again, it's a really loaded question because it really depends. Like, what kind of experience do you want out of the car? Do you want it to start up every time you go to start it? Do you want it to break good? Do you want to be able to go to that Cars and Coffee safely and, have something that you're proud of? All these things really dictate where we go. Horsepower costs money. Pretty paint costs money. Really nice interior costs money. Really kicking stereo system costs real money. So we want to put together the best package that works for you. I will say one thing that I tell people is you're better off going whole hog from the beginning and just doing it all at once rather than, I think I'm going to get my paint job done. And then 6 months later when I have the money, I'm going to put my new engine in it. Well, now we're dangling an engine and trans over fresh paint, and we don't like that. Let's be honest, who wants a pretty car with a crappy engine? If you're going to go the steps of trying to do it piecemeal, do the things that matter first. Make it run good. Do the new engine, do the LS swap, do the wiring. Probably the thing that people think about least is the thing that makes the car work, which is the wiring. These cars have 50, 60-year-old wiring in them. It's been cut up by teenagers over every decade, putting, stereos in it and different lights and this and that. And it's just old, it's failing. That's the thing that makes the car work. Let's make it work. Do the engine first. Make it brake safe first if you're going to do it piecemeal. Let's not talk about piecemeal. Let's talk about going all the way, right? So I'm going to quote every job the same, right? Our process is very similar, whether it's a RESTOMOD or whether it's a restoration. They're both equally as involved. It's just different parts. We're building a full-on RESTOMOD Chevelle. I'm going to spec, maybe a Roadster Shop chassis or an Art Morrison chassis. Or we can work with the original chassis and just do some small upgrades to it and put some tubular control arms on it and coilovers and things like that. And this is the reason why I'm saying, it varies. It really depends on what you want and how far you want to go. Now, I'll say it's probably in the long run, you're going to get a better product, and it's going to be more cost effective to just do the thing you want from the beginning rather than redo work later. So if you want to build a full-on amazing 67 Chevelle, spec the chassis. We'll get the chassis for you. Let's do it. We can put the big Woolwood brakes on it. We can put the Ford 9-inch in it. We can have it set up as a roller and ready to go. That's the base of your car. Then let's fix the body and put it on that chassis. Then let's big block, LS with a supercharger, whatever it is, that's what you're going to spend. Right? So I'm going to take you around the shop and we're going to show you some cars and talk about some cars that we've worked on here that are in various stages and kind of where this stuff goes. Brass tacks of it is basic car build, start with a good car. Maybe it's got a decent motor in it, but we're going to upgrade some things. We're going to make it look pretty. We're going to put a sound system in it. We're going to rewire it. Minimum 120 grand. That's just what it costs for the time and the parts. And I'm going to say that a lot today. Time and parts. The people that work here get paid by the hour. We charge you by the hour for their work. Part of that hourly rate keeps this beautiful building paid for. We got to pay rent every month. We got to keep the lights on. We got to, the guys need water to wash their hands. We got to pay the water bill every month, just like you do with your house. We've just got a really big house that's really expensive here. So part of that hourly rate is baked in for where we're standing here talking about this. And, the system I do my estimating on, that costs money. Each one of my techs tracks their hours on your car and your car only. And you can see we've got 54 cars in the shop. This is what it looks like on any one day. This car's here, this car's here, this car's here, this car's here. And when someone's working on, Mr. Ellis's Scout, they are tracking time on his car and his car only. Each tech, they hit start, they hit stop. This is how it works. I have a lot of people call me and say, hey, what's your hourly rate? I'll say a couple things. One, it's kind of irrelevant. If we're just putting a Willwood disc brake kit on your car, it's $210 an hour. That's just what our, if we're inspecting your car, if we're doing some upgrades, if we're getting it running, our normal mechanic rate here in Northern California is $210 an hour for a tech to touch your car. Some people are like, well, that's really high. Well, the Hyundai dealer down the road charges more than that. The Mercedes dealer charges more than that. The Ford dealer charges more than that. Here's a real game changer. Go get your oil changed at Jiffy Lube. Do you know how much they charge an hour? No, you don't, because they don't charge you hours. They charge you for an oil change. Guess what? It's like $300 and some an hour because it takes them 10 minutes. Now, granted, they don't have a line of cars going, 10 miles down the road waiting, and they're not doing 700 oil changes a day, but that rate has to cover that. When we're talking about a full build, the rate really varies. I know what my minimum to have someone standing in this shop costs me when I pay them and their portion of the overhead. We need to at least meet that minimum and make money. We're in business. We're not here to do this stuff for people because we love cars. We do love cars. We're passionate about what we do. But at the end of the day, this is a business and we have to make money doing what we do and providing the services we provide. A guy that's highly skilled at metalwork, his time is going to cost more than, a guy who's just block sanding a car. And sometimes it can be the same guy. I don't care. I'm going to charge a different rate for the more skilled piece of the work, right? The kid that's sweeping the floor, you're not paying him for his time. I mean, it's baked into your hourly rate again. So at the end of the day, hourly rate really doesn't matter. What matters to me is results. And we want to give you the best result for the money that you spend, your hard-earned money on your car. And, I have a habit of pulling out this Ben Franklin quote all the time. And this Ben Franklin quote is, "The bitterness of poor quality lasts long after the sweetness of a low price." And it just is something that remains true, There's cars in that shop right now where the guys took the cheap route and they got burned. So, buy once, cry once. That's another way to put it. If you go the cheap route, like we've had to redo work that people paid money for. And that's just a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to do. So do your research. Find someone you're comfortable with. I don't care where in the country. You come to us, go to another guy. Make sure you're comfortable with the way they do business. If they don't give you a detailed estimate, if they say parts, this, labor, this, give me money. That's not a way to do business. If I give you an estimate on a full build, it's going to be 6, 10, 15, sometimes 25 pages long. Every single part detailed. Every single estimated hours for each part of the process detailed. That's what you want to see. And when you think about the term that I just used, estimated hours, I give you an estimate. That's not your bill. That's not what it's going to cost. We don't do anything for one price here. Until your car is here and we take it apart and we have it, media blasted, chemical dipped, whatever it is, we have no idea what we're going to find there. We don't know how many bolts are going to break. And sometimes a broken bolt takes 2 seconds to extract. Sometimes it takes 2 hours. Sometimes it takes 20. It's not up to me. It's up to Mother Nature and that bolt. We use professional tools. We all have knowledge here. We're not breaking these things on purpose. We're not being heavy-handed. It happens. And we have to repair things. Let's show you some restoration stories in the flesh of where things have gone and how far we've had to go with things. And we'll give you an idea of what this stuff really costs. But in the end, it depends on the results you want. All right, so this is a perfect example of something that comes into our shop. Corvette, the anniversary edition, Indy 500. Looks like a barn find, right? I mean, really, this thing's already had a lot of mechanical work done to it. It's here for paint and body and some custom exhaust and things like that. But perfect example of a starting point. I have my dad's old Corvette and I want it to look new again. Great. Well, what are we dealing with under here? What's lurking under here? This is a pretty clean car. And obviously this is a fiberglass car and it's got plastic bumpers, so it doesn't have any rust. There could be some rust lurking underneath there. There is some metal parts to the structural elements of these cars, but just to paint this car, we've got to strip all this old paint off. Now, if it was a metal car, I'm going to send it to blast. We're going to want to get the inside, the outside, underneath, everything, every bit off, and you'll see some of those. But fiberglass car, I don't put paint over old paint. Why? Because if I just sand this thing and shoot paint over it and we put it out in the sun, it's going to look great. And a month later, my customer's going to come back and he's going to be like, what's all this funny little stuff happening underneath my shiny paint? This is different paint than we use these days. And what happens is when we spray stuff on top of here, it reacts with what's underneath. And some of those things soften up and they start coming and it creates flaws and it creates weird little things with our clear coat and our base coat, and it can start delaminating and falling off. Now, I'm not saying that that's the golden rule, that always happens. I want 100%. I don't want the chance of anything happening. And we could very well scuff this car and spray it and it would look fine for the next 20 years. But for me to give you a warranty on my work, I have to take everything off down to bare substrate and start fresh. So let's look at some metal cars and we'll talk about that. But this is a perfect example of, I want to restore this car. Well, what do you want, right? This car, we're gonna manually strip it. We're gonna take it down to base substrate. His interior's already done. His engine's already done. Got an LS3 in it, GM E-Rod crate motor. Super cool. It's gonna be super fast. He's already had the chassis restored, everything done. He wants us to do a kick-ass exhaust and he wants it to look really good and he wants us to finish the work that another shop started. And so we've got to go through and nut and bolt things and make a few things work and fix a few things here and there. But perfect example. Now, is this going to be 100 grand? No. This is a pretty clean car. We don't have to buy any parts for it. He's got everything for it. We're good to go. I'd prefer to buy the parts for the customer, but this car was at another shop that went out of business. We saved it. You know, is it going to cost 20, 30 grand to paint this car? Yeah, in labor. And then the paint's 10 grand, you know, or 8 grand. You know, our primers and our additives and our paint and our clear coat. I mean, every time I mix a 20-ounce thing of clear, it's like, you know, 250 bucks. You know, that's my cost, right? Then my time to spray it. So let's take a look at some metal cars and we'll talk about some cars that are in various states and we can show you, you know, this is where we start, this is how far it goes. Okay, let's talk about this 52 Studebaker pickup we've got. We've got the cab over here, we've got the hood over here, we've got some doors, we've got the bed, we've got the fenders for the bed, blah, blah, blah. First step of doing this is we take it apart. That is by far the easiest part of this process. 2 guys, 2 days, we can take a complete car, blow it apart, put all the nuts and bolts in bags, you know, mark it with your RO number, repair order number, because that's how we track everything here. We can have everything taken apart. Putting all that stuff together and making it look pretty, that's where all the time is. It just takes hours, 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 hours. So this Studebaker pickup is a prime example. This thing, he had someone else working on it. He wasn't really feeling the vibe of their work. It was kind of not looking great. They were cutting corners. So he brought it to us. We're doing a complete build on this thing. We're doing, you know, chassis work. So we're going to do a Mustang 2 front end on this 52 Studebaker pickup. So it's going to have coilovers. It's going to ride real nice. It's not going to have that solid axle with kingpins. We're going to do a Ford 9-inch in the rear with a 4-link setup, coilovers. We're putting an LS3 in it, a 4L60, and we're going to make it look really pretty. We're going to wire it. We're going to put air conditioning in it. We're going to do all the things. But this is where it starts. Bare metal. This hood was fairly destroyed. Now, if this were a Mustang or a Chevelle or a Camaro, I could go to a catalog and I could buy a new hood. We'll talk more about reproduction parts later, but I can't get a hood for a 52 Studebaker pickup. we had to work with what we had. We ended up, this hood had a lot of damage on it. It was really lumpy. We actually did some heat shrinking on this because it had some oil canning, you know, we did some hammer and dolly work. We ended up putting the whole hood in the English wheel and smoothing it out. And now it's in body work. So it's had some filler done to it. It's had some polyester primer done to it. It's been blocked. It had a little bit of, you know, some pinholes in the filler and things like that. It's pretty close to ready for paint. There's a week of work into this hood for one guy, right? So that's a lot of work, but we don't have a choice. We can't just buy a new hood. So we worked with what we had. Doors were in a little better shape. They took a little less time. This bed, it's going pretty well. It's got some damage, but we've done some metal repair. We've done, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We've been fitting the fenders on and off to make it fit right. But this stuff is just a lot of hours of work. You know, it takes a team of people, you know, hundreds and hundreds of hours to get this thing ready for paint. You know, I think a lot of people have a perception like they see this stuff on TV and, you know, and they got Chip Foose over there and they're just gonna sand it and then it goes down to the paint shop and it comes back pretty. You know, the reality of it is we don't just sand it and shoot some paint on it. It'll never look good. It'll never hold up. You know, it has to go through many layers of products that, you know, make all that stuff happen. You know, start on bare metal, get the metal as close as we can, get it fit right so that the, you know, like on this, for example, one of the things, you'll see this tape here, we've been putting this fender on and off and trying to get all this metal to fit the curve of that fender without any tension, without any issues. We have some problems down here. We're gonna have to cut some spot welds loose and, you know, hammer it out and get everything moved back into place so that when this thing is together, it all looks right. It all flows really nice. This is a truck. Trucks get beat up over their life. This was probably at some farm in Dubuque, Iowa, getting, you know, hay and horse shit thrown in it for, you know, 20 years before it was left out in a field to rot. And, you know, we're bringing it back to life now. So cool. It's just a lot of work. You know, Aiden's been working all week just on this bed and these fenders. So, you know, it's just a lot more work than people think. So let's talk about some other cars and some realities of where they've been and what happened. So this 240Z here is a perfect example of something that's maybe a little further along than the Studebaker pickup, but this car, unfortunately, the guy, you know, went one route and chose a shop that did some not so great work. We essentially had to redo all the work that they did. This 71 240Z came from the Midwest. Customer's dad bought this car new, had it shipped to Ohio. It lived its whole life in Ohio, pretty much. And if you're from the Midwest, cars rust, right? And these things, not a lot of metal here, they're pretty thin. Japanese car, right? So floors had to be replaced. Quarters had to be replaced. A bunch of the structural elements underneath had to be replaced. A bunch of stuff up here had to be repaired and replaced. Again, unfortunately, that guy spent thousands and thousands of dollars at another shop, and then we had to in turn redo their work, buy new panels to redo their work. It was pretty horrendous. And I feel for the guy, but we're making it right. We're getting it fixed right. You know, it's on a rotisserie. There's a term a lot of people see, rotisserie restored. I mean, we take a car that we're just painting sometimes and put it on a rotisserie, even if we're not doing the rotisserie restoration. Several reasons why. One, it saves us time. When this car is up on this thing and we can move it around, and before we did the floors, we actually put a bunch of metal bracing in here that was tack welded in to keep the car together so that we could spin it on the rotisserie and not have it fold in half. But we can access the bottom of the car just by flipping this thing on its side, and you know, we're welding the floor standing up. I'm not laying underneath the car trying to weld and not get, you know, weld spatter in my eyes. But you know, again, go with a shop you feel comfortable with, keep them honest, make sure that they have a very detailed estimate, make sure that they understand that you have a budget and they're willing to work within that budget. Fortunately, this guy got burned, but you know, we're at the point now where we're putting suspension on the car, we're gonna make it a roller, and then we're gonna fit the rest of the body panels, and we're almost ready for paint. I mean, this is pretty close. You know, you can see there's a little filler on top of our primer. There was maybe a little bit of work we had to do to tighten it up a little bit after we primed it and blocked it, but the underneath has been sprayed, the inside has been sprayed with a urethane texture coat that keeps everything nice and together. We do that to a lot of cars here. I've already sprayed the engine bay so that when we put all those panels back on, it's all done. The great thing about this car is we're painting the whole car black, so I can paint the car in pieces. If we were doing a metallic, I've got to paint the car together so that the metallics match from the door to the quarter and from the door to the fender. But since we're painting this car in pieces, we have the luxury of doing it piecemeal. So that's one example of something that's come a little bit further. I'm going to show you some cars that are actually already painted, and we'll talk about how bad they really were and where they had to go. All right, so let's talk about Mr. Michael's 65 Malibu here. It's a pretty paint job, it looks great. This car drove into this shop. It was white, it had a few little rust bubbles here and there. It looked like it had maybe 3-4 coats of paint on it over its lifetime. Customer bought it in high school, so common story. Who knows, he probably paid $1,500 for the thing when he bought it, right? Had it his whole life. I'm not certain how old he is, or maybe a little older than me, but he's a firefighter, we need those guys, we need to keep them alive. We thought, hey, this car's not so bad. It's actually pretty straight and, can't be that bad underneath there. Of course, my rule, we go to bare metal because I'm not gonna put paint on paint on paint on paint. I know it's gonna fail. He was in for that ride. What we didn't expect was what came back from Media Blast. I could walk you around this car and show you everywhere we changed, but I can tell you, we replaced the floors. We replaced the trunk floor. The bottom of these doors was rotten all the way down. We reskinned both quarters. This part of the fender was destroyed. This part of the sail panel was completely gone, and this drip rail was missing when it came back from the blaster. It was just a mess. And now's about the time where I'm going to talk about reproduction parts versus original parts. There is a misconception in the industry that, I can just buy parts out of a catalog. I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you, sometimes the reproduction parts just don't fit very well. Sometimes they do. Some companies are better than others, and sometimes, frankly, you don't have a choice. But my rule is if something is repairable within a reasonable amount of time, I would rather repair than replace. And I will tell you, we repaired these fenders and doors, one, because they're hard to get, but two, when I buy reproduction parts, a lot of times they're close, but maybe this line doesn't quite match up, right? Maybe this line doesn't quite match up. So now I've got to take a brand new part, cut it apart and do metal work to it to make those things work. And it's just as much work as making a patch panel here. We have the luxury of having the skills to take a piece of flat metal, roll it in an English wheel, weld it in, and make a proper repair. I think there's even a structural element in here that we replaced, and we just made the pieces, we welded it in. Did we spend more than, a fender for this car probably costs $450. Costs about $150 to ship it here. Because it comes freight, it's in a big box, we don't want to get it damaged. It's gonna get damaged either way. They always have one corner folded over or some dents and dings in them. We've got to strip the E-coat off. I would reasonably say that we probably spent about the same amount of time as we would have putting an aftermarket fender on this car versus repairing this fender and making it right. Plus we're keeping the originality of the car. Who really cares about an original fender? But I've even gone to the lengths of, look, if this hood wasn't salvageable, I might go on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and try and find a good used hood and hope for the best, versus there's been cars where we bought aftermarket hoods and there is a 1-inch gap on each side because it's just close. Am I gonna add 1 inch of metal all the way down there, or cut it, section it, move it? That's just silly. Sure, a Mustang, a Camaro, a Chevelle, you can buy out of a catalog. A Mustang, you can buy a whole damn body out of the Dynacorn catalog, and that's a way we could go. There's still gonna be fitment and metal work to that. It's not just a scuff it and paint it. This car is a perfect example of something that it's come a long way. It's been a long road. This stuff takes time, it doesn't happen overnight. So Don't think you're going to drop your car off and a month later pick it up and it's going to be done. Sometimes these things take a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes even 4 years if we're getting really deep into it and we're creating something magnificent. The car looks awesome. His engine's back in it. We didn't do anything there. We just cleaned up his old engine. We did paint his valve covers to match the car. I like it, you know. And we did upgrade a few little things. We have Holley fuel injection on there, but you know, this car completely rewired end to end. That's all we're doing now is we've got some trim and some glass and, you know, interior to put in it, and it's good to go. But it's come a long way. And, you know, something like this, still his original 350 with some upgrades and a new exhaust and some headers, EFI, complete rewire, complete new interior, paint and body work, 120 grand all day. You know, and we're not going whole hog on this. This is a driver quality car out of my shop as far as I'm concerned. This is not a show car by any means. But he's got a 25-year warranty on this paintwork. I know it's not going to fail as long as he cares for it well and he doesn't take it through car washes and he doesn't, you know, use, you know, dirty rags to wash it. Paint products that we use, I know what's on here, every inch of this car. And the manufacturer and my paint supplier will back me up on that warranty, because if something fails, it's because their product failed, not because our application did. So, you know, again, not a show car, but the finish is amazing. And the difference between a show car and a regular car is just everything that you don't care about is given the same attention to detail as everything on the outside. And there may be more exotic colors and, you know, things like that on a show car, and that's where the level goes up. But, you know, I don't know if I would necessarily consider this car a rotisserie restoration, but it was on a rotisserie. It was on and off a rotisserie many times for us to fit the panels and get things working right. You know, this is a good example of kind of like, I don't want to say the lower end of what we do, but an average job. 120, you know, if we would have put a new engine in and new transmission in and new rear end and upgraded his brakes, it might be 150, 160, and that's today's prices in 2026. That stuff changes every day, but that's around about what it costs. I don't care if it's a Chevelle or a Mustang or a C10 truck. It all kind of costs about the same. It all requires many of the same parts and about the same time. Convertibles take a little less time because we don't have a roof to contend with, but that's not a major factor here. You know, you're talking about, you know, 1% of the job. So that gives you an idea of this one. So here's another example of a car that's fully painted. We're getting ready to assemble it. We've done some other things to it, but this car, truck, SUV, whatever you want to call it, and the original SUV as far as I'm concerned, but these things normally rust buckets. I mean, they're usually like the floors are gone, the quarters have to be redone. But this thing was amazing. I think the only rust repair we did was on the inside in the back here. I think a tiny bit of rocker repair. It was wearing original paint, so the blasting didn't take a lot of, you know, time to do or a lot of damage. You know, I don't know, $1,800 to blast the whole thing, transport it back and forth, a few $100 each time. But an example of one that we didn't have to go hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into metal work on. I mean, it did need a fair amount of body work to get to this point, and the paint application and the finish is amazing on it, you know, and we're doing some basic chassis modifications, but roundabout price kind of still, I mean, this one we're putting an LS3 in, we're putting a 4L60 in, it's going to be 4-wheel drive, it's going to have some nice wheels and tires. We're going to custom fabricate some bumpers. I mean, this is still going to be in the 150K range, bottom up, but everything touched. We built a custom roll cage for the guy. So, you know, versus the Malibu, which needed a whole lot of metal work to get to look pretty, but we didn't really do drivetrain stuff. I mean, we painted his frame. This one we've painted, but we're actually going to modify it. We're going to do shackle flip kit. It's still going to be leaf springs, but it's going to have some upgrades. But the drivetrain is going to be all new. You know, LS3, those things cost money. And he's got some more custom touches. So again, cost of a restoration versus RESTOMOD versus whatever, it really just depends on what we do and what you want. And we're happy to guide you down that path. You know, my tendency tends to be toward RESTOMOD because, one, I want my customers to have a great experience. You know, that this LS3, 430 horsepower, stock with a warranty, You know, turn the key, it fires up every time. Not gonna let him down. This guy can take his kids skiing in Tahoe in this thing and feel really good about where he's going. Everything's gonna be new. Let's talk about the 67 Nova now. So this is more of an example of a true resto mod. And this car is a little dusty and dirty. Trust me, the paint's really pretty underneath here. This is my car. My car doesn't get worked on in this shop very often because we're very busy. But I'm building this car to sell, so if anyone's interested in the 67 Nova project, you know, hit us up. But this car here, actually, kind of similar to the Malibu. It had a lot of rust, it had some issues, but it's a 67 Nova. That's the one everyone wants, right? I can tell you that this car has probably 15 to 1,800 hours of body work, metal work, paint, finish work, chassis work on it now. It's a roller at this point. It's got brand new bumpers, brand new grille, everything's been fit, everything's been touched. The real killer here is, this isn't just your average 67 Nova. This thing has a Detroit Speed front clip on it. It has a Detroit Speed 4-link in the rear. It has some really nice fancy billet hood hinges. This is set up for an LS to go in here. We could put an automatic, we could put a manual in, depending on, you know, where we want to go when we sell it. But there's a lot of custom work in here with, you know, things closing off gaps, and we made these custom panels to finish everything. And, you know, it's got these Detroit Speed inner fender liners, which look really cool. All the fasteners here are stainless button head screws. You know, everything's been fit really nice. The gaps on this car are of show quality. They are perfect. We plan to do a leather interior using Porsche leather, and you know, it is just going to be balls out amazing car. This is the kind of car that you see cross the Barrett-Jackson block and sell for 4, 5, 6, 700 grand, right? So to build that car, it's gonna be 250, 300, 400, depending on where we go with the horsepower that's in it. With the, I mean, we could spend 50 grand just on interior here if we want to. So that gives you an idea of the level of where you can take things and where they change, right? This isn't even a full-on true resto mod because it doesn't have a full chassis in it. It's a unibody car, but it does have the good stuff in it, right? I mean, this front suspension and steering kit and brakes, you know, is, I don't know, 18 grand plus the time to put it in. I mean, it's got 18-inch wheels on it, and the brakes barely clear it. You know, they're big, giant 6-piston Willwood, you know, whole hog, you know, brakes, which is the way you want to go with something like this. Because if you're going to put, you know, 600-700 horsepower in something, you want to be able to stop those horses as quick as you started them. You know, another example of, I mean, we've built other Novas and they look really nice. We didn't maybe take them to this level. But like, you can take a gapping tool and go in all the door gaps and fender gaps and everything's, you know, dead nuts even perfect. It's just time to do that stuff. The direction of your build just depends on really your budget and where you want to go with it. You know, the parts cost what they cost. You know, so at the end of the day, like I said, the number really varies. You know, it could be 75, 85, 125, 200, 300, 400 grand. It just really depends on what you want and what you want to put in the car. You know, the parts are what the parts are. We're willing to sit down with you and talk through kind of where you want to go and maybe say, well, if your budget's only here, we might hold back on these things because they're not going to really matter that much, but spend the money in the right place. Spend good money on brakes, spend good money on your drivetrain. You know, make sure the wiring's gonna be up to snuff. As a guy who makes ugly things pretty for a living, the pretty part is the last thing I wanna think about if I'm on a budget. I want the go before the show. When you put that work request in, give me some information. Tell me where you're hunting. You know, if you just wanna make the car run and drive, you know, we might be able to do that for 5, 10 grand or less. If we want to make it run and drive well, we might put some more money on it. If we want to make it run, drive, stop great, always start, look pretty, you know, a lot of people reach out and they're like, I want to make this car into a daily driver. Well, that's a tall order. If we touch everything on the car, it's a daily driver as far as I'm concerned. Are you going to want to drive it every day? Maybe not. It may be something of too much value to do that. But we can give you that reliability. It just costs money to do it. While we're extremely passionate about what we do, like I said in the beginning, this is a business. We need to make money doing it. We want to give you the best product so that you have the best experience with the car that we build for you.